The Saints are 2-0. They got a big test coming up this Sunday against the Packers at Lambeau Field. Should be a really fun one. Chris Vogel here of the Straight Up Saints podcast, joined by John Hendricks for this one. John, thank you for joining the show. How's everything, man?
I'm doing well, man. Just looking forward to some nice little weather going up in Green Bay, but it's not too bad down here. But you know, it's a different world up north there.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, for the Saints, it might be a good thing that they catch them now. You still get a little bit of a breeze, maybe, but you're not going to get decimated by any snow or anything of that nature. So it should be a fun one. Before we get into that, just want to talk about maybe the most pressing conversation going on for a team that's 2-0, because you think it would be just all positive vibes. And to some degree there is, right? This defense has looked phenomenal. I think there's moments where the special teams play has been really good for the Saints too, but there's still some concerns. And I'd say the one thing would be pass protection paired with also, it seems like the first two games, there's been one throw that Derek Carr would probably want back in each of those two games. So when you look at this situation, for me, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with, I think if the pass protection starts to get cleaned up, their quarterback will feel a little bit more comfortable. Once their quarterback feels a little bit more comfortable, maybe you get rid of those throws that he probably shouldn't be making. I'm curious for you, John, how much of a concern, if any, is it to you? Or do you think it's one of those situations where more reps, they'll get it cleaned up? And this is just something where it's a new cadence. There wasn't a lot of preseason drives for the entire first-team offense. How do you assess the situation? Because I think there's been individual moments of really good stuff for this Saints offense, but obviously it's just the consistency factor that has to get better.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'd say there's concern, but I'm not really concerned. And look, we asked Pete Carmichael today and just talking to him about some of this. And look, it's not all on the offensive line. I thought the offensive line played better. Some of those the protections might have fallen on the running back. It might have fallen on the tight end. It could have varied, right? And so I think we always say, well, as a sack, it's definitely on the offensive line. But I thought Trevor Penning played a lot better in this game, but obviously the end result still is Derek Carr has been sacked 4 times in each of these games, right? And you mentioned and alluded to the throws. You can't have those. And I think the commonality here is that you're starting pretty sluggish in the first half, right? And I think you've got to be better there, because the second half team looks like, where was this all game, right? And I think that's the biggest thing that we've kind of seen over these first 2 games. And so, look, I think they got to figure that out. I think to be much better in the red zone. I think that you get guys like Jimmy Graham on this roster, Juwan Johnson, they're red zone threats. They got to be able to put these drives away. I think that's just something that will come in time, as we go about it. And, Sunday against the Packers is a great day for that to happen for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a big part of this kind of component, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask about it, and I see a couple of comments in the chat, so it kind of leads me to something I wanted to bring up to you, and you've been all over this, is terms of the Kendre Miller situation and just the running back situation as a whole for the Saints. We knew that Alvin was going to miss the first 3 games, so there's no surprise there. So the next man up ends up being Jamal Williams, and I couldn't wait to see what he's going to do in week 2. I thought it was a favorable matchup against Carolina and their run defense, as opposed to what Tennessee's done for the past year and a half with just being stout up front. And he gets hurt, has the hamstring injury. Doesn't sound like he's going to play. So can you kind of give us a 2-parter here? What's the situation regarding Jamal Williams? And then on the second factor of it, a player that a lot of people can't wait to see make his regular season debut, Kendre Miller. It sounds like he's going to be a full go. So what's going on between those 2 running backs there?
Yeah, so Jamal Williams is going to miss some time. I mean, that's the biggest thing there. I was watching the film, especially last night, the coach's film, and it just looked like he was on a routine tackle, a routine play, and that's kind of the last we saw of him. So, look, this is Kendre Miller's show, and they obviously signed Tony Jones Jr. to the roster, to the active roster, so they're not going to call him up. And so those are 2-year backs going into this game. Now, Kendre Miller, he's excited about the opportunity. He knows he's kind of been behind the 8 ball. He's dealt with some injuries and such. But, look, this is his opportunity to shine. Look, this team is excited to get Alvin Kamara back, and they'll have him back after this game. But, in the meantime, they have to get it done. Packers run defense has had a lot of opportunity. You saw last week against the Falcons, not too good. Bears, there's room to get some yards here. And, look, when you talk about the running game, it's not just those 2 backs, although Kendre Miller is going to get a lot of the touches here. It's going to be Taysom Hill, and you're going to have some Adam Prentice sprinkled in there. So Taysom Hill is going to be a huge part of this game plan, in my opinion. Just looking at how they used him. I mean, you look back at that film against the Panthers, it wasn't just QB powers. I thought Eric McCoy did a phenomenal job of just moving the guy out to be able to create open run lanes for him, but he was running outside. He was taking pitches. He was handoffs. And so that's just the element you get with a guy like Taysom. And obviously Kendra is going to be the big story here. I think Tony Jones Jr. be a guy that you probably see on third down passing situations just because he's able to pick up the blitz a good bit. But first and second down, I got to believe Kendre Miller is going to be in the mix. I don't think we're talking about Alvin Kamara-like production here, but I think he's going to be in a nice situation with an opportunity to be able to run the football and showcase some of the things of why they drafted this guy.
Yeah, and this is why I love having you on, John. There was like so many things I wanted to ask in between, and you just were able to rattle them off because I was gonna be like, I'd love to see Taysom Hill have a similar game, as opposed to Monday. I feel like 7-8 carries is always kind of like that sweet spot for him in terms of having good production. Then Tony Jones Jr., and I figured you just mentioned it, and I'm not surprised, was the ability to pick up the blitz and be able to help out with pass protection. So I'm excited to see what he could do too. At his first 2 touchdowns of his NFL career on Monday. I want to flip it over to the defensive side of the football and kind of get over to a guy who I wouldn't say we were surprised that Marcus May got suspended because obviously, over the last 2 years, there's kind of been that February 2021 incident that's been like looming over. And the Saints kind of knew it when they signed him. And obviously now it's going to be 3 games. But with him being out, you've been at practice, you've been able to kind of see what's going on. It seems like Jordan Howden's been getting more reps. Do you feel like that's a guy who will be the starter when Sunday rolls around and kickoff happens? Or do you think it's going to be maybe a committee approach to figuring out that safety spot next to Tyrann Mathieu?
Yeah, I think this is Jordan Howden's role. I think he's going to be the guy. They're really high on Jordan Howden. The guy's a sponge. He's very intelligent. I mean, this is a guy that's a blue collar type of worker, just chips away, doesn't do much extra other than put all of his efforts into playing. And he played at both safety positions in training camp. He worked with Tyrann Mathieu one day. He worked with Marcus May one day. I think the biggest thing for him is the communication. That's going to be the biggest thing for him. He's got the playability. I know he's going to get tested over the top, but I think he's ready for it. And so, look, I think if it's not him and all the roles, because you got to still remember they run dime packages. So I think Lonnie Johnson Jr. is the guy that can fill that role if they do want to have him with Tyrann, in some of the reps. They have Ugo Amadi. He was a late add to the practice report, just in knee injury flare-up today. So they have some options potentially. JT Gray's another one, but I think this is when you say it's all said and done, Jordan is going to be the guy that has all those snaps. Again, they're very high on him. I think he's incredible. I loved what I've seen from him in training camp, and so I think he's going to be the guy for the next few days. And again, you probably touched on this with Marcus May, but for fans who just don't understand, you got to wait until the legal process plays out with Marcus May, because I was like, of course they would wait until they're 2-0, all this stuff. They couldn't have done anything, and that just got wrapped up with his plea deal at the end of August. So this is not crazy timing. I mean, this is actually happening a little bit faster than we probably anticipated.
Yeah, and if anything, you kind of mentioned that, and I saw some people, I don't know if it was joking or not. I feel like that always comes with the reactions, but for the Saints, it's probably better off you get it out of the way now and you kind of know what your situation will be in 3 weeks' time for this secondary. But I find it fascinating. You mentioned Jordan Howden getting those reps. Really fascinating to see what he can do. It seems like, and obviously I'm not going to put the pressure on 2 rookies for a game against Green Bay because it's going to go much further than that. But I think it's fascinating. The Saints are going to be able to see, we've seen a lot out of Brian Brazil already. Now you're going to get 2 other rookies into the fold and kind of see what they can do in a bigger role. So I'm really excited for that. Before I get into Saints Packers, I want to talk about someone that you've done really, really good film breakdowns on, and someone that, even outside of the film has been a player that, fans will be watching as the game's going on. And, maybe coming into week 1, I didn't expect him to be as hyped as he is coming into week 3, but man, he's deserved it. And it's Carl Granderson. You've done a really fascinating job on just kind of covering and talking about, and he continues this, he's going to get paid. So what do you think's kind of been the difference for him? Do you think it's a technique thing? Did he come in with a different maybe frame or weight than he had last year? What's kind of been the difference for Carl Granderson? Because like you mentioned, 2.5 sacks for 2 games, and it's not just like a fluke thing. You see that motor on display every single time he's out there. What do you think's kind of been the key for him?
Yeah, look, again, he's somebody I've been high on all offseason, and just the thing, he knew that this was not going to be given to him. Dennis Allen was public about that. I thought Peyton Turner could potentially challenge. He looked great this offseason. He shed some weight. He's playing around 287. Look, everybody's got to remember, he took snaps from Marcus Davenport last year, and that was just kind of the belief. And the biggest knock on Carl was was, just like Trevor Penning was excelling at the run protection, and he had to work on the pass protection. Carl Granderson had to work on his run defense. He was good against after the passer, and so he worked on those, slimmed down in his frame a little bit. And again, you see the pass rush. He just has raw power that he's able to use. He has some nice spin technique. He has a lot of different things. We saw this on display in the preseason, and we saw this on display in training camp. I mean, I said it every day that I had my notes. It was Carl Granderson making one play or two plays. We saw it translate over into joint practices with the Chargers. We also saw it in the preseason. So, look, I'm not surprised that Carl Granderson is having this success. And, of course, it is a contract year for him. So, look, I think he's got it. And again, it's a good thing to have, a good problem to have when you have such a talented pass rusher at your disposal. But look, he is making the most of his opportunities. And look, the Packers' offensive line now is very, I would say, limited, or they're kind of limping in here a little bit. But here, and Jordan Love is a guy that has had two really good games, and he's faced the Bears and the Falcons, and no disrespect, but this is the Saints defense. They've got the pass rush, they've got the linebacker talent, they've got the secondary talent. They have all the makings to be able to make this a spoiling home opener for the Packers.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, so let's get right into Saints Packers, and you mentioned the offensive line. I think at the very least, just going off the injury report, it kind of seems for the Packers they'll probably be down at least their left guard and Elton Jenkins, and who knows, maybe David Bakhtiari misses as well. And if that happens, all of a sudden, it's a different ball game with having that defensive line out there. So you talked about Jordan Love. He's looked really solid through week 1 and 2. And I think it's really impressive because he's done it without Christian Watson. And then week 2 didn't have Aaron Jones. For the Saints defense, obviously we know week 1 what it was. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, a veteran offense in Tennessee that kind of lacked explosive abilities. And the Saints did a really good job. Didn't let them get in the end zone. Then week 2, rookie quarterback Bryce Young. Had it not been that prevent defense towards the end, again, they would have gone without giving up a touchdown. And even then, we thought the defense played excellent back-to-back weeks. Even now, I'm not saying it's like a juggernaut of a team they're facing offensively, but do you feel like through the first 3 weeks, the Packers present the biggest challenge for the Saints if guys like Aaron Jones and Christian Watson are back in, or is it dependent on whether or not those guys are playing? How do you view kind of this Packers offense, this Saints defense going into Sunday?
Yeah, look, I think, on paper, Jordan Love, I mean, you can't dismiss what he's done the first couple of games. I mean, he's actually, in his first several starts, he joined an elite company of just 4 quarterbacks. I think it was Case Keenum, and then there's Pat Mahomes, and there's a couple of where he's thrown for 3 touchdowns and no picks in each of those games. It's only 4 of them. Kurt Warner was the other 2, but he's joined elite company. But again, you're facing a much better defense here. And again, the Falcons have to figure things out. They got Ryan Nielsen, so there might be some similarities there. But look, I think there's a lot of respect for Jordan Love there. We've heard DeMario talk about it. Cam's talked about it. There is a lot of respect for what he's able to do. And again, he handles himself extremely well, but the biggest thing is if you don't have the run support, and even if they don't have Aaron Jones, they have Dylan out there. So that's a chance to run the football. Christian Watson, not having him in there would also be another thing. But, again, if you're down on the offensive line, that's beast mode for this defensive line. I mean, this has been a very vicious pass rush the Saints have had, not just off the edge. The interior is getting it done. This is a much better defensive line than it was a year ago. And we're just 2 games in. They've got more takeaways. They've had more sacks. They're just on a really good pace. And so I think this is more dependent on what can Jordan Love make happen. I don't know if you're going to have the big playability here. I think they might try it. But Marshawn Lattimore's playing at another level. I think Pete Warner and Demar Davis are playing out of this world. I mean, as of right now, if you would have told me this defense is playing this well this early on, I expected a little bit of a sluggish out of the gate. They lucked out against the Titans, 2 big plays that the Titans could have had. They, lucked out on that, and then they had the big screen of Derrick Henry, but not giving up big plays other than the Bryce Young run where he kind of juked Marcus May. But look, I think Jordan Love is going to have his hands full, and I'm not saying that's going to be easy street for the Saints defense, but I think it's going to be there's going to put their scoring streak to the test for sure. But, they're always a bend, don't break type of defense. They're extremely tough in the red zone, so you're going to have to take every yard you can get against this defense, but it might be a little bit tougher for Jordan Love than it has been in the first 2 games.
Yeah, and I think with this Saints defense, and I agree with you. I was actually shocked. I expect them to play decently well coming out of the gates. I didn't expect, this. This is just a level of dominance that I expect when they're in October, November, you start hitting your stride. This is what I expect to see. But obviously, it's great to see them coming out of the gate this hot. And I feel like I'm not the only one who's wondering this, but do you feel like this is finally the weekend where it's like good defense, or great defense, I should say, is not going to be enough to get the win? The offense has to start carrying its weight with more consistency, because I would argue, and I think most people would agree, the second half offense for the Saints, I think there's been some really nice adjustments from Pete Carmichael. I think they've kind of found moments. You look at the Tennessee game, you look at that the Panthers game. If you take out that 3rd-and-2 play where Derek Carr gets sacked, I'm not so sure they don't score another touchdown. All of a sudden, we're talking about back-to-back drives, starting to find something and get into rhythm. So I think they've shown that they can make the adjustments, but this is a type of game where you're playing a Green Bay defense that I thought, in terms of stopping the run against Atlanta, and I know Atlanta's run scheme is just outrageously good, they showed some flaws there. Is this the one where the offense has to pick up its slack? And if not, you're maybe staring at 2-1. Like, how do you view how much weight this defense can carry again going into week 3, knowing that it is a different challenge? You're not going up against a rookie. The Panthers O-line obviously last week banged up. I know Packers O-line's banged up this week too, but I don't know. For me personally, I feel like this is the week where Carr and the offense have to start playing a little bit more of a consistent role and playing complementary football, or else it catches up and you say, okay, there's your first loss of the season. How do you kind of view that?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to guys like Cam and Demario, which I mean, I talk to them all the time in the locker room, but they're going to say put it on the defense, so they're going to welcome the challenge, obviously. And the thing is, for me, I think you see this offense be able to put up points. That's the biggest thing. And again, they've been able to get it done the first 2 games, no problem. The biggest issues are red zone execution and just getting off to a better start. I think that's the 2 things that you want to see. If they can fix those 2 things alone, I think this is going to be just fine, right? I think the offense will be just fine. But, you got to avoid some of the early sluggishness, if you will. I think all 3 receivers, Thomas, Olave, and Rashid Shaheed, are playing out of this world right now. They're doing the things that are necessary. And if you just need some proof in that, go back to last year, how hard it was to be able to convert a third work, how many 3rd and long situations you had, how many times your run game couldn't get it, and just the play calling. I think this is a better execution on the offense. And again, proof is in the pudding with the points, all those types of things. But I feel like for this game, they definitely have to be able to put up some points. I'd like to see them not have a tug at the heartstrings type of game, but I feel good, even if they can't, if they limp out of this in the first couple of quarters, that they can make the adjustments. But, you don't want to get in a situation where you're playing from 17 down or 20 down or whatever the case may be. You got to be able to sustain drives, put points up on the board. Something we really don't talk about. This is a grass field, changes a little bit on the footing, a lot of things there as well. But, look, I think this offense is going to start showing. And the biggest thing for the offense is, I think the belief is, you brought in a free agent quarterback. We compare him to Drew. Everything is the Drew Brees standard, right? And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it was fair for Jameis Winston. I don't think it was fair for Derek Carr. This is a different style of offense. This is a different type that can get it done. But to say they have to score 30 points a game every single game, I just don't think that's realistic. But as you move out of September, you go to the middle part of the season, if you're still doing the same things, then I'd be a little bit more concerned. But September is the time where you fill everything out, you make the adjustments. I feel like this offense will make the adjustments and show everybody what we kind of saw the capabilities were back in the offseason.
Yeah, and I agree. I've seen, to your point, there's like enough plays where you're watching the offense. You're not going, oh man, this thing is just like completely broken and it's not going to work. It's just trying to get out of that rut. And if we take last week's, this past Monday's game, we're talking about fixing one other drive. And if the Saints put up 27 points, we're like, yeah, they're going to win a lot of games if they're able to kind of hit that mark. I honestly think with this defense, they hit 20, 21 most games. They're going to be in a pretty good spot just because of how good this defense has been over the last couple of years. So I have 2 more questions for you. This one's going to be a quick one that I'll pull up from the chat that I thought was a pretty fun one. Is there a defensive and offensive player on the Saints that you're kind of highlighting for this week that maybe it's a really good matchup that for them, or maybe you think, man, they're just going to keep this thing rolling, like a guy like Carl Granderson, who you kind of viewing for this Packers Saints game and thinking they're going to have a big impact and leave their mark on it?
I think this is Chris Olave again. I wanted to say Michael Thomas. I think it's Chris Olave. For me personally, on the offensive side, defensively, I think I can't go against Carl Granderson. He's just doing too much to be able to do that. And an honorable mention would be Taysom Hill.
Yeah, those are good ones. I'll throw in one more just for the offensive hat, and maybe it's me like waiting to see this guy have that big game. I feel like we got to have that Juwan Johnson like breakout game at some point. I feel like it's coming
At some point.
Maybe it's this Sunday against the Packers. It'll happen sooner or later. But John, before I let you go, in terms of this matchup and not just the confidence level, but if the Saints were to go 3-0, the statistics of teams that go 3-0 in terms of making the playoffs, it's very high. And it's not even just high of making the playoffs. The teams that end up making their conference championship games that season when they go 3-0, the numbers are all very staggering in a good way. For this Saints team, I know Dennis Allen's been a big proponent on just kind of stacking one win and you move on to the next and you try to stack it and continue. And he's done a really good job of relaying that message, kind of that 1-0 and then carry on, go to the next one. For you, if the Saints go into Green Bay, they win, and they go 3-0 without Alvin, and they go into week 4, they get back number 41. Does your confidence level change in this team at all in a positive way, or do you feel like they're doing exactly what you expected? Like, how much more would your confidence in the Saints change if they go into Green Bay, they win, and the next week they get Alvin, or is it going to stay the same for you?
I felt good without Alvin in the mix just because of all the things around him. I thought they could split some of the games. If you were telling me that they could at least go 2-1 without Alvin, I take that. I think that's a good thing to have. And look, they missed Alvin. They're going to get back. He's going to change the complexity of this offense and just be able to make it even more of a nightmare to guard up against them. But if they go 3-0, you got to remember you got the Bucs right behind them. This is a conference game, and then you go to an NFC South game, and you know what's coming when it's Tampa that comes to town. This is a big game in the grand scheme of things. And of course, you want to win all your games, but they're not looking ahead to Tampa, I don't think. But after you get back this and you get Alvin in the mix, look, Alvin, again, he didn't do this last year. I don't think he's looked the best of the past couple of years. Some of that's quarterback play, some of that's play calling. You had third downs. He's not on the field. You have red zone. He's not on the field. You got to put Alvin in there. And I know they want to reduce some of his workload, may change up a little bit now that Jamal Williams is out of the picture for a little bit. But look, getting Alvin back, if they're 3-0, I think it's even better for this offense because just Alvin alone can account for so much of the pie. You talk offense that he's able to create mismatches. He's able to do so many things in addition to just running the football. I think he'll add the elements of the screen game. All the confidence would raise infinitely with them being 3-0 and getting Alvin back in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And they got a good chance to do it. John, thank you so much for joining the show on this Thursday. I really appreciate it. And I'm assuming you're making the trip to Green Bay. And if that's the case, I hope you have a great time there.
Yeah, good weather, very nice weather. I think the high is like 75, and then it's going to be 49 one day. So I'll enjoy it. I'll get me some cheese curds. I'll enjoy all the things about Green Bay and what they have to offer. Great atmosphere. Love going up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining the show, John. Before we go, I'm going to get a quick word in from DraftKings, and then when we come back, I'll talk about my quick prediction for this game, and then any comments you guys have, I'll pull them up.
Can you believe we've had 7 months without an NFL game? Crazy, right? Well, good thing that's over. NFL's here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is giving you a can't-miss offer. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any NFL game. DraftKings is hooking everyone up with game day greatness. Download now and use code BOOT to sign up. New customers can take home $200 in bonus bets instantly just for betting $5. That's code BOOT only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours.
Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program. So before I go, if you guys have any other comments you want to talk about this upcoming Saints game, maybe your prediction for this game, any comments, questions, concerns, you could get them in the chat and I will pull them up. But until then, I just want to say when it comes to this Saints-Packers game, I know on Monday I talked about how the Saints kind of needed a win because I needed to see them break that ugly streak in Charlotte and be able to beat the Panthers on the road and get to 2-0 and win the games you're supposed to. If the Saints lose this game against the Packers, you might feel like this is a cop-out coming from me. It really isn't going to change my opinion of the Saints. I thought that the Packers, and I may be dead wrong on this, I have the Packers making the playoffs this year. I had them winning the NFC North even over the Lions. I've been a big believer in Jordan Love. This goes back to his Utah State days, and that goes to me wanting the Saints to draft him back then. So my view on the Saints won't change if they go into Green Bay for the Packers home opener and lose. But if they do win, and it's something that we talked about with John, and you go 3-0, and you know the next week you get Alvin, and boy knows that dome 3-0, if you get Alvin back, is going to be rocking. Man, it really tells you a lot. And if the Saints end up beating the Packers, and we see guys like Kendra Miller, guys like Jordan Howden step in and start playing well, all of a sudden you start talking about this 2023 draft class and what they can bring to the table this year and then future years, and that's how you start sustaining success. So I can't wait. I think it's going to be a really exciting game. In terms of prediction-wise, I'm so on the fence. I think it's a field goal game. I think this is going to be a nail-biter. I think it's going to be an excellent game. I'm just torn whether or not I believe the Saints are going to be the team that wins in that kind of 24-21 ballpark, or it's going to be the Packers. I'm going to go Saints, and the one reason I will is because the Packers O-line is banged up, and I think that will be advantage Saints defensive line, and this is a unit that in years past, when they first banged up over offensive lines, I go, they should step up, but they wouldn't. And on Monday against the Panthers, they did exactly that. Sunday against the Titans 2 weeks ago, they did exactly that. So I love this unit, and I think they're going to get it done. So I'm definitely going to look at some of the predictions that you guys have. If anything, I see Jerry says he's got the Saints winning 24-14 Sunday. If that is the case, hell of a statement win. And I see a lot of people right now, whether it's power rankings, whether it's just early predictions and stuff, the Saints are left out of the conversation. I saw someone put up their power rankings for the NFC, top 10 NFC team. And the Saints were not in the top 10, despite being undefeated and 2-0 and whatever, out of the top 10. If you want to start getting that respect, although I don't think the Saints need it, that doesn't matter. What they do this year is not dependent on whether or not guys like Mike Florio or Chris Sims like the Saints. They can give a rip. But I think if you want to gain that respect, you go into Green Bay, you win, you're 3-0, and now you're getting back Alvin Kamara, who I believe is going to be, having a bounce back year. You start to look at the Saints a little bit differently. See Carlos here saying Carl Granderson's been balling out. He has, and I think Carl Granderson, we talked about it before with John, that's the type of guy you go into Sunday's game. If the left side of this offensive line for the Packers, both your left tackle and left guard are out. Right now, it seems like they'll miss their left guard. If they miss their left tackle too, oh boy. That's where Carl Granderson can really get it going. So he's the type of guy you probably circle on Sunday and say, man, if they're going to win this game, he has to come out and play well. And I think he will, because he hasn't shown you any different through the first two games. Eric says he got the Saints winning 17-14. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair score, to be honest. I think that right now, until the Saints offense shows me that they can sustain drives, especially putting up points and not giving away anything, it's tough to go over 17-20, right? I think this offense is capable of putting up 27 on a given day, but I think for them, they need to be able to show a little consistency. So that's where it'll go. So we'll see what happens, but it's going to be a fun one. I can't wait to see how it goes down. And of course, when that game finishes, I will be coming back on here with a post-game live stream, win or lose. We'll talk about what happened. Hopefully, it's another victory recap and then a Monday morning show. But until then, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, enjoy your Thursday night. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I'll be back for more. And hopefully, we talk about another Saints W here on Boo Crew Media's Straight Up Saints podcast.